Wonderful to have you. This is second in the series of cloud leadership roundtables with Microsoft as our sponsor and partner on this, and they are helping to build this thing together. We have brought in regional and international leaders, and we're very grateful for the people who are attending today, and I'll introduce them in a second. What we're doing is we're basically pulling together in this particular session cloud migration. It's cloud natives and cloud apps, and we're basically looking at business solutions, practical solutions for business owners, for CTOs, for CIOs, and one of our guests, Dr. Nadine, she is very experienced in this area, and she's going to be talking about some use cases. So that'll be, something that is quite interesting as we go forward. Is your head in the cloud yet? Well, it should be, because when we're talking about growth and scale, we absolutely need to have, a full engagement with the cloud. And we can get more and more workloads to the cloud as fast as possible, because that really is the future. It is no longer a future aspiration for people. It really is now an urgent mandate. The cloud is an essential requirement for digital transformation. And the global disruption that we have at this point in time due to the pandemic has really re-emphasized the importance, the fundamental value of systems, resilience, agility, adaptability, and scalability. This is critical for us right now. Here's a quick scenario on where we are in the COVID environment. 24 months have passed exactly. We went to, I think it was the 16th of March 2020 when we went remote, we went home, and 2 years later. Now, the next we survived, we were resilient, that was required. Now we are in the next 12 to 15 months about resourcefulness, collaboration, and particularly innovation. This is the stage we are at this moment. Now, this time next year or later, we'll be looking at radical reinvention, disruptive innovation, and what I call adaptive radiation, how we can adapt and grow, and so on. One of my favorite slides, the exponential digital shift that has happened during COVID has fundamentally changed the game. It's accelerated decades into months in every single industry, whether it's e-commerce, online, remote working, remote learning, telemedicine, you name it, every single industry has changed. And this is critical. Now, in this process, the cloud has played a role. If we need to move as fast as this, we need to be able to engage. Now, the Darwinian dilemma, either we adapt or we die. And, this is inspired from Don't Look Up, and the meteor is coming. And in that process, what's happening is that over the last 20 years, companies that were designed in the 20th century are coming down. 75% of those companies will no longer exist in their original form by the end of the decade. And the 21st century companies that are coming up, 50% of them will replace the 75% of the companies that are coming down. Those 50% of those companies have not been born today. So every single thing is to play for. And we are now in what we call the absolute transformation decade. Now I'd like to introduce to our two esteemed guests. One of them who's from a Microsoft specialist, an expert in this area, Adir, he's joining us. And the second is Dr. Nadine Haj. She is a PhD in AI and machine learning. She is an educator. She is, she's a data scientist, a specialist in AI, and has done a lot of work in cloud. So she's the all-rounder that we have. So welcome to both of you.
So first of all, very excited to be here. My name is Adir. I'm the Cloud Application Innovation Lead for Middle East and Africa. Part of my role is actually to do that, to understand how that shift from how we used to build software is changing to what we're currently seeing. When we're talking about cloud native, the idea is how to take cloud native as an engine, as a toolbox to drive innovation. So really connecting to everything you just heard, it's not just about our purpose to innovate, it's also about the toolbox that is offered to us today to innovate. And those are two different things. One of them is more technical, one is more around the business, but they're very tightly coupled. because you cannot chase a train with a bicycle. So if you're trying to be as innovative as possible, you also need to understand the new building blocks of technology. And this is what cloud native is. So I wanted to just give you a sense or sort of set the framework, the stage on what cloud native is. So trying to do this as least technical as I can. It's just a new way to build software, build innovation, build application. Instead of doing those big applications, trying to deliver them every few years, we're trying to decouple them into services, into containers, into packages of code, and connect them together. Let's look at some of the challenges that we're seeing today, and I think you would find them very surprising because most of them are not really related to technology. So we're looking at time to market. This is a survey that we've done on, for our customers to understand where they see the challenges. Everybody understands cloud native is where we want to go. So we have a 7x release cycles versus 10 years ago. Everybody expects the business to ship faster, to experiment, to learn, so that the entire process is different. We have a big issue with trust and security. A lot of those components are open source, so you know what's happening. Every time you see a dependency or an issue, there's a chase to fix it. Team collaboration, and specifically on standards, has become incredibly hard because, again, we're not talking about every 4 years, so we don't have time for developers and the operations and Q&A and everything to be like in a very standardized way. We need this to be a bit more flexible and agile, and this requires a new set of teams and tools.
First of all, dear, that was very, very nice to listen to. I think you've mentioned to capture a lot of the pain points that we have been dealing with as a community in terms of just not just technology, but in terms of dealing with other businesses and with different types of challenges when we talk about cloud native and cloud migration. A little bit of a background on me. By trade, I'm a data scientist. So whatever I know about cloud native and cloud migration comes from mostly me building and developing applications within the AI and data science space. I've previously was the data and AI practice lead for Crayon, which is one of the largest global Microsoft partners. I've recently moved to one of the largest government entities in Dubai as chief data scientist. But I do have a lot of experience, with Microsoft technology specifically, but also with a lot of customers across Middle East and Africa, dealing with things related to adoption in terms of innovation. And because innovation these days is pretty much very linked to everything related to AI, and that's, one of the big asks of everybody around. A lot of the innovation that we're seeing around is really driven by what the cloud has enabled in terms of cloud computing, in terms of scalability, in terms of cost cutting, in terms of so many other benefits. So when people ask, why do I need to migrate to cloud, or why do I need to choose the cloud as an enabler for my solutions? Because if you look at some of these examples that we've seen here, they're not necessarily technology-based, technology-first companies. These are companies that are either in the entertainment business or the hospitality or the transport or even the food delivery. I have a few other stories that I could share about some of the startups that I have worked with in the local market. But the point here is that born in the cloud, companies have been able to experience how easy it is to disrupt and to innovate by adopting to the cloud. So really, what is it that we're trying to say in here? So, and by the way, a bit of a statistic here, 90%, this is per Deloitte 2019, I think it's a bit outdated, but it's a Deloitte study that actually showed that 90% of global enterprises will be relying on hybrid cloud by 2022. And when we talk about hybrid cloud, this is basically more, a setup where, we're not really comfortable going fully cloud and we're not ready yet to be completely on the cloud. We do have some things that we don't want to move and we want to keep in our own data centers for whatever reasons they are, or because we don't want to disrupt our business processes, or because we don't have the capability to rebuild our applications within the cloud. So we'll go into a hybrid approach. And, that statistic by itself just shows you that, we're already in 2022, just shows you where this whole trend of cloud migration has taken us in the past few years. If you compare that to where we were 5 years ago or 10 years ago, we see a big shift.
Let's say I have a $10 million business, I have 20 people. I and just like last week we were doing on cybersecurity, until it happens to me, I don't know what to do next. Particularly, as I mentioned, the 20th century companies who are now migrating, the retail companies, the various organizations, the shop, those companies need to migrate, and the incumbent leaders, the CEOs who are 50 plus, just don't get it. Adir, what is your experience and your advice to these people, and basically say it is now not an option, but now it is a necessity?
So I think it goes from, the fish and the stick. In one way, it's really about discussing the challenges of not doing this or the risk of not doing this. And we have a lot of examples already. I would say that I think some of the examples that even Nadine shared are actually competing on a space that was previously occupied by other companies. Okay, think about, biggest hospitality was Airbnb, or biggest travel companies, Uber. Those are they took from someone else, and you don't want to be that someone else. So this is a lot of the discussions that we're driving from the stick side of saying there's a cost to not doing this. I know that it's really hard to think about it on upgrading, because you always think, okay, if I'm not going to upgrade, then I'm not going to get benefits, but I'll stay in the same place. That's not the case. If you're not doing this, you're actually going backwards. And I think this is something that we really need to stress.
It's interesting you spoke about Airbnb and Uber, and if you look at the development stack, I mean, they have about 50 to 75 different applications and so on put in there, and only about 5, 6, 7 of them are proprietary. Everything else is just available out there. So actually building it together, it's almost like a Lego piece that they are actually building it in. And without that cloud capability, that would absolutely not be possible. So that speed to market, I think, is there. So again, going back to my earlier, the Darwinian thing with the meteor and the dinosaur, is is that folks who have built their companies 25 years ago, they think, oh, we have a 25-year-old company and we are doing fine. They are the most vulnerable. So both to you, Adir and to Nadine, what do you advise them? One was demystification, and the other one was how do you remove that fear that my company is going to disappear and I won't even understand what the hell it's all about, and what am I really now the CEO or the owner of? Nadine, can you quickly comment, because you've seen a lot of this happening and people resisting?
If you're a small business, then you have the advantage of being way more agile and way more open to experimentation than large organizations. It's very difficult to move a beast. And it's very difficult to be able to drive innovation in companies that are riddled by processes and compliance and other things. Not to say that they're not able to innovate. But also, if you are a business that has been established for 25 years and you are doing your classical business, you have your revenue generating products or services that you provide, but you also want to be looking at where you're going to be in the next 5, 10, 15 years and have a long-term plan. The fact that you have been established for that long, it means that you have a history of transforming yourself, because no company can survive for 25 years without having gone through some sort of transformation, either because of technology or because of other factors. We've seen what COVID has done. Now, why wait until a crisis the likes of COVID hits that forces you to transform? Why not be ahead of the curve, or why not try to ride that transformation wave? That's what you talk about, Tarek.
Yeah,
and leverage that.
I will challenge you on that, because our human instinct, our immune system clicks in, our personal immune system and our corporate immune system clicks in, because immediately we say, oh, it's too complicated and it's too technical and we don't understand it, we are not going to do it. And that actually, so it needs a crisis. It needs urgency to be able to bring about that shift. Otherwise, why would you want to change something if it's still ticking along? So Adir,
because
yeah, please, Nadine.
I'm sorry.
No,
Because
no.
if history has not taught you that this is imminent, then you haven't learned much.
What do we need to do? I mean, are there any examples that you can share with us where people will start getting the confidence. They take the free assessment from Microsoft, go in and look at that, and then make that shift, because a lot of them are not. Because the average 20% company, 20 people company does not really have a CIO, CTO who's able to understand this. So I think this is where you guys come in as advisors.
We have a lot of companies that are building with Microsoft as sort of hackathons or hackfest. They're bringing a lot of small companies to try and build features together. We had this for one of the big financial organization, and a lot of small companies joined to that undertaking. Now, the challenge was to build something that is around payments, okay? And accidentally, the small company built the entire feature. Now, they did this in 3 weeks. So this was great success. And then we sat with the CEO and I told him, be honest with me. How long did it take you with, 5 times the resources, 20 times the developers to do that same feature that that small company did in 3 weeks? He told me 8 months. Okay. So that was the time. And in talking about history, it's not about those big things, those big words. It's about clicking it where it hurts. That's the first time that he looked at that screen and said, you know what? Now I understand, because my time to market with, much more resources than those small companies is not equivalent. So I think it's really about trying to take this into the ground, into brass tacks. What does it mean for your company? And when you're getting those examples of how long does it take you to be responsive to the market? Then you can ask the next question. So what happens on the next feature will come? Will you be again less than market? Will again a small company with will do this in 3 weeks? This is where it hurts. And then the discussion opens up to, okay, so I understand I have a problem. What do I need to do to fix it? And again, always keep this on the demystified world. So this is why the assessment for itself is the idea is you don't have any risk here. We're just going to work on this with you together. You don't want to do anything after, leave it. You want to wait for COVID and the next crisis, that's great. But let's understand what's the gap, because that may mean, smaller steps than what you think. And one thing that I do have to add is that a lot of people have that concept from cloud from 5 years ago, from 8 years ago. The tools today for migration are easier because they were built for those scenarios. They were built for those small companies that don't have a lot of resources, CTOs, to do that migration. So part of the way to demystify is, again, the assessment, telling you thought it would take you, 3 weeks to do this. That would just take you one day.